So it seems that we cannot do co-hosting when we started the Zoom session. So we stayed the practice that we're giving the host role to the presenter, and the presenter should give back the host role to me when finish the presentation, okay? The ones who didn't have time to test it, giving back the host role is the way that clicking on my face and then top right corner, there will be a three dot menu in a blue box, and then make host menu gives me back the host, okay? Thank you very much, and now we should get started soon. The YouTube stream started.
Nekem nem világos, hogy adjuk vissza izét a hostot. E-mailben is nekem.
Are we starting?
So, dear colleagues, I think that we should start, and hopefully other colleagues will join us. It's a good news that more than 180 people registered to this conference, so we do hope that it will be a really broad audience for today via Zoom and many on our YouTube channel. So very welcome to the midway conference of the Foresight project. On behalf of Budapest Metropolitan University, my name is Ferenc Kis. I'm the Vice Rector of Innovation and member of the project team. And I will be the moderator of the first session and some others later on. I would like to invite you to join us and use the opportunity what this electronic platform gives us as a opportunity with chats, with contributions. We will have some other contribution options, so I do hope that you will have many ways to contribute and interact with each other. First, just go through our agenda for today. Before that, I should like to remind you that we record this conference for documentation purposes and for education purposes as well. Lectures and discussions might be part of the later course work and course materials. Project is funded by European Union Erasmus Plus program. So our agenda, that after our short opening session, we will have 3 esteemed keynote speakers presented with topics regarding our Foresight topic in different aspects, and I'm eagerly looking forward to listen to their presentations. After this session, we will have a Q&A slot when you can put your questions. Your questions can be put via the chat in Zoom, and the questions couldn't answered in the time frame will be answered on the website of the project. Then session 2 will be in partner speeches. The project funded by 5 universities, and these topics are presented by colleagues. And part 3 will be about the online platform we are intended to use for the e-learning courses and some excerpts for e-learning materials we are under development. And finally, the closing session will sum up the day and some conclusions. So this is our brief agenda, and then I would like to call Professor Balint Bachmann, Director of the Budapest Metropolitan University, to welcome the community, to welcome the audience. Balint, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear and see me well. It's a pleasure and an honor at the same time to represent Budapest Metropolitan. I think the Foresight.
Sorry, your sound disappeared.
Okay.
No, okay, yes.
Now it's better?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
So I'm happy to speak in the name of the Budapest Metropolitan University, hosting today's midway conference in this online form. It's a pity that because of the curfew regulations, this community cannot meet in person. My colleagues reported from the meetings in Tilburg for educators and students' workshop in Antwerp enthusiastically. And they are really hoping to be able to go to Bilbao afterwards. I think especially how important it is during our education to including for the students, for the future professionals, the social aspect. I think and the project itself is a great contribution to this innovative education approach, and I wish you all the best, success for today's conference as well. And of course, I hope in the name of METU, my organization, and the colleagues of mine, to host you in person one day in Budapest. Thank you, and have a nice day and an interesting conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Balint, please give the host role back to me.
I do.
And in the meantime, I would like to call Mr. August Demir, who is the project coordinator of the Foresight project, to welcome the audience and open the event. August?
Thank you very much. I think everybody is hearing me. It's a big pleasure and honor for all of us to start this Midway conference today. And it's, as you can understand from its name, we have been in the middle of the project that we have started maybe 18 months ago, but the idea has started like more than 3 years ago. So this was a joint initiative started by Fontis University of Applied Science, Academy of Creative Industries, supported by the partners. But then, you know, the way that we've followed brought us to a position that we're now leading the project. So it's a, as I said, you know, it's a huge effort. And before starting the giving some ideas or some information about the project, I would like to thank all the partner institutions for supporting this project. Fontis, METU, Bilbao, and Karel de Grote in Antwerpen. So far we have been doing a great job for introducing these new future-based approach at our universities to push our students to be more innovative and more sensitive to what has been going on in the world. So the idea of the project is mainly using the future and leveraging these sustainable development goals or grand societal challenges that we face off for a while to be the inspiration for our students to be more innovative or more solution-based with a sustainability approach. So since the project started, we have been doing preparative meetings with the professors or with the teachers to identify the key competences. We're trying to figure out how these competences should be transferred to the students. And we have been discussing about the content of the project, how we can use the SDGs as a leverage for the students to be more innovative or future aware or future conscious. So, and then there were two important milestones we have achieved so far. The first one was the teachers meeting in Tilburg at the end of November 2019. We brought 25 professors or teachers from 5 universities, and we identified the content. We shared what we have figured out so far, and we discussed how to use these content to be valuable for our students. So this was a very important milestone for our project that we figured out, that we proceeded. And the second one was the first intensive program in Antwerp, Belgium. And it was a very exciting day for all of us because the idea was, the dream was real at that point when everybody came together, and 100 students from 5 universities, from different countries, from different backgrounds, from different understandings, came together in Antwerpen and discussed about the future based on the sustainable development goals identified by the United Nations. And we try to figure out solutions for these grand societal challenges with the help of our students, or they figured out the solutions. And we tried to use the new ideas, the ideas that they have, the fresh ideas that they have to identify these innovative approach to the solutions of these problems. And now we're doing the Midway conference. Unfortunately, like Professor Bachmann mentioned, you know, we were very enthusiastic about being together in Budapest, but you know, we're now in another period of another grand societal challenge that we have now, the pandemics. But thanks God, we have solutions, we have technology that we can still discuss the future. And next year, as we hope that we're gonna be together with another 100 students in Bilbao to do the second intensive program based on our experiences in the first one. And I would like to also mention that this period we're facing brought some challenges that we need to solve with the help of everybody. And I hope that this project will, this conference will bring us some new ideas to be able to figure out how this break in our lives with the pandemics will affect our future, both in terms of education, in economy, or in other senses. So I would like to thank to all our distinguished keynote speakers here. I would like to thank to Budapest Metropolitan University administration and the team that they organized such a nice conference in the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before we start the keynote speeches, I would like to give you some technical information. We would like to have your contributions with keywords regarding the keynotes, regarding your concepts about the topic. So right now we start the Mentimeter word cloud functionality. This way you can contribute in the course of the 3 keynote lectures, and then we will ask the presenters to evaluate the outcomes. I will share you the screen with the final word cloud. So this is the menti.com, and the ID is 500214. This is the code. And when you are entering them, you can contribute multiple times with keywords, phrases regarding the topics. What do you think? What are the most important things regarding this issue? I hope that it is easy to use for you. I will show this information between the keynote lectures as well. And this is the time to call the first keynote speaker, Professor Zoltan Oscar Santo, who is working at Budapest Corvinus University, and he's head of Social Futuring Center and head of the Institute of Advanced Studies at Corvinus University, Budapest. He's an economist and sociologist, and having many managerial roles at the university as dean, as vice rector, and now his research focus on the future science. And we are very happy to he accepted our invitation to present his research outcomes. So Professor Zoltan Santo, you're the host now, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ferenc. I do hope that you are hearing me.
Perfectly.
And also I try to share my screen with you with my presentation. Can you see the presentation as well?
Yes, yes.
Super, thank you very much. Respected colleagues, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank for the invitation to the management of Metropolitan University. And I'm really happy to be here, and I am honored to be able to share our ideas regarding social futuring with this project. So in the name of our research center, I thank the invitation and I thank the opportunity to be one of the speakers of this conference, Midway Conference in the Foresight project. As you can see, the title of my presentation is Social Futuring, Beyond Resilience and Future Proofing. And this presentation is based on a paper which was published last week in the journal titled Information Society with my colleagues Petra Océl from Corvinus University, Chris Ball from Quinnipiac University, United States, and from János Csák, who is an affiliated professor at the Social Futuring Center, and by me. And I will share our ideas with you regarding the concept of social futuring on the one hand, and in the second part of my presentation, the possible measurement of social futuring of different countries. So what is meant by a good life in a unity of order, and what we expect a nation or a country to provide for its citizens in terms of a good life, is a question dating back at least to ancient Greece. Social futuring returns to the classical perspective, the classical Aristotelian perspective of a good life in a unity of order as a very broad notion of welfare in a society. It uses this as a normative metric and basis for evaluation, and this normative framework is one of the aspects that makes social futuring, according to our evaluation, a unique approach. So how can we define the concept of social futuring? Social futuring represents a new multidisciplinary approach that provides a holistic view to measuring a social entity's ability to strategically plan for and sustain itself into the future, while attempting to maintain the broad goal for its constituent members of their achieving a good life. The traditional yet more modern approach simply looked at the country's GDP and assumed that GDP and welfare were closely related, so that more GDP implied more human welfare. But of course, new measures have emerged to more completely capture the notion of welfare and a good life, from happiness indices to measures that incorporate environmental sustainability, all efforts to get a more complete picture. Each of those critics brings a specific perspective, however. The happiness literature attempts to measure people's personal psychological well-being. Sustainability measurements focus on environmental well-being and long-term viability. Other indices focus on aspects of the political system, like rule of law, and others still continue to look at traditional economic indicators, such as competitiveness. But each function in isolation, in silos that are separate from each other, in an effort to better understand a particular aspect of society and social development. 3 years ago, we started a new research project focusing on social futuring to develop a new holistic view of these problems on the one hand, and also to develop a social futuring index, a country level index, to be able to measure the ability of different countries in terms of social futuring. So the definition of social futuring starts with a social entity on the one hand, requires intent on the other hand, and a forward-looking approach along with an ability, on the third hand, to make changes, all with a single goal in mind. To operationalize this concept, we next clarify each of these components. Let's start with the concept of social entity. The subject of social futuring is the social entity, an organism as understood based upon the concept of personhood, which denotes cognition, intentional activity, and self-consciousness, as well as awareness and recognition of the self-state of mind as distinguished from others. Social futuring focuses on social entities constituted by persons who are given the ability to interpret things, such as a new challenge as we were facing recently, the pandemic, make conscious decisions and take action, and who are embedded into various groups and social networks. These social entities include, but are not limited to, the following, namely organizations, cities, settlements, regions, countries, country groups, or even nations. The second element of our definition is intent, and the third one is ability. So we follow this definition by pointing to the aspect that the social entity, whether it is a country, an organization, or a city, must be able to operate functionally, to sustain and reproduce itself over a long period of time, to be self-conscious, to formulate an actionable strategy for itself, and to provide its members with a good life. As I mentioned in my introduction, we have developed a normative framework to approach the problem of social futuring. In other words, the social futuring initiative assumes a broad definition that is grounded in the moral, philosophical, Aristotelian Thomist tradition, which considers that we are in some respects social beings, a genuine aspect of whose telos, goal, is participation in shared ends. The social futuring project is about the study of characteristics that make this telos, or goal, more or less successful, and starts with the assumption that the ultimate purpose of social entities is to enable a good life that is worth preserving and reproducing. Therefore, maintaining the good life in a unity of order is the starting place and ultimate normative objective for social futuring. How can we characterize this normative framework? We have four fundamental aspects of this normative framework. We call them normative standards, such as peace and security, attachment, care, including material advancement and freedom, and finally, balance. Peace and security is the minimum substance of a unity of order. It enables social entities to reproduce, to raise children, and to provide for themselves and others, and to make predictions and influence their future. Attachment is essential for healthy bodily, psychological, intellectual, and spiritual human development. The most basic unit of attachment is the family which determines the consciousness of what a relationship, dignity, equity, authority, and hierarchy are. Care, including material advancement and freedom, is the maintenance of material goods, must entail the accepted practices of production, distribution and acquisition, use and disposition of private and public goods, scalable management knowledge, and therefore the image of wealth and the nature and value of work. Balance is a state of mind, an attitude towards life, and a prerequisite of generativity. It is about being free of unproductive societal comparisons. And these normative standards follow each other in a hierarchical order, meaning that without the minimum level of peace and security, no attachment, care, and balance is possible. Without the minimum level of attachment, no care and balance is possible. And last but not least, without care, balance is also impossible. There are different levels, degrees, or forms of social futuring according to our conceptualization that we might also consider when entities engage in some degree of ensuring their own future viability. Also, we have distinguished the disjunctive sufficient conditions of social futuring, and based on this differentiation, we made a distinction between three basic forms of social futuring, such as proactive, active, and reactive social futuring. To bring about changes, future changes, and to prepare for influencing expected future changes is the form of proactive social futuring. When we try to neutralize the limitations of the expected changes and to exploit the future opportunities, we are in the basic form of active social futuring. And when we are to prepare to manage the risk associated with the expected or unexpected changes, we are in a situation of reactive social futuring, such as in the last months when we faced the coronavirus problem in the world. It is a typical form of reactive social futuring, but now we try to be proactive in terms of preparing ourselves for the second wave of coronavirus challenge in the world. How can we place the concept of social futuring in a broader context? We can compare it with traditional social science approaches, such as, for example, economics. The implication of this comparison is the following. The distinction that is most clear by starting with the social science most distant from social futuring, namely economics. Economics studies almost the exact opposite of what social futuring aims to study. Social futuring studies the success of self-aware collective groups called social entities that define and strategically move toward their collective goal. Economics, in contrast, studies how self-interested individuals manage to organize limited resources without a central design through a spontaneous ordering doing by the market, subject only to the natural laws of economics. One of the leading representatives of this approach is Manco Rolson Jr., who in his famous book, The Logic of Collective Action, concluded that large groups, social entities in our terms, at least if they are composed of rational individuals, will not act in their group interest. This is what we question in our social futuring approach. A range of modern social scientists, even in relatively traditional fields, have, however, begun to adopt alternative approaches. Easily included in this list could be Harari's recent contributions to rethinking both human history and human future, as in his works Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, published in 2017, and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which was published a year later, where he merges a long-term macro-historical view with insight into human evolution to address the concerns all humans are facing and will face in the future as well. A similar forward-looking approach, applied a little less broadly than in Harari's exceptionally wide brush strokes, would be the work of George Friedman, generally focusing on global geopolitical trends, best captured in his book titled The Next 100 Years, which was published in 2009. A final approach applied to cross-section of human behavior, but not necessarily across time or with an eye toward the future, would be birthed by Albert Laszlo Barabashi. But the conclusion here is that despite some recent innovations from those working in the vein of Barabashi, Friedman, or Harari, most traditional social sciences following the economic approach of considering individual rational actors pursuing their own self-interest. The starting point is to consider individuals who have their own, not common plans. Social futuring, by way of contrast, starts by only considering a collection of individuals who have a common plan and then studies how the collective group achieves a broader outcome as defined by their common plan. There are other branches of the sciences that have gained prominence as separate fields in recent years. These fields share much more in common with social futuring and reveal that social futuring's intellectual location is more in line with these newer approaches. They are the study of resilience and of future proofing. Comparing them with social futuring helps to clarify the areas of social futuring shares with or builds upon them and where it's distinct from them. Now you can see these pictures where there is social futuring, resilience, future orientation, and future proofing. And with the help of this figure, we try to find the common fields between social futuring and resilience, between social futuring and future orientation, and between social futuring and future proofing. And of course, there are common fields, as you can see in the table, in the figure. I will not go into the detail because I'm running out of my time. But as you can see, we try to show with the help of this figure that social futuring, on the one hand, wants to build on the concept of resilience, the concept of future orientation, and the concept of future proofing. But as it was indicated in the title of my presentation, we try to go beyond resilience and go beyond future proofing, or in other words, we try to integrate these different approaches. I skipped this kind of comparison between social futuring and resilience and social futuring and future proofing, because I would like to show you as the conclusion of my presentation the foundations of the social futuring index we have developed recently regarding the OECD countries and regarding our conceptual and normative framework. So the study of resilience, future orientation, and future proofing contribute new insights into how cultures differ and what parameters affect an individual's or a group's ability to engage the world around them over time. Social futuring aims to do the same and also provides a normative framework for analysis. The social futuring initiative set the practical goal, on the other hand, to develop the social futuring index, a composite measure of countries comprising a number of indicators in 4 different pillars and in 4 different normative standards, as I mentioned earlier. The focus of the index is a life worth living, which can be characterized by the 4 normative standards, namely peace and security, attachment, care, and balance. And the scores of the index will be interpreted from the perspective of the worthwhile life as a standard of living. Now, in this figure, you can see the conceptual framework of our approach to social futuring. Good life in a unity of order or civilization as lasting constitutedness can be interpreted according to our approach in these 4 normative standards as good human ends, peace and security as a basement, attachment, care, and balance. So these are the good human ends, and we call these 4 aspects of our approach normative standards. At the same time, we have 4 pillars, tools and means, pillars to serve good human ends. And we made a distinction between 4 pillars: the ecological geopolitical pillar, and its function is to provide stability and potential to maneuver to make choices for different kinds of social entities. And also we distinguished technological pillars, socio-economic pillars, and cultural pillars. Technological pillars make life easier. Socio-economic pillar gives the chance to reproduce the social entity as a whole, and the cultural pillar is to nurture different social institutions that overarch generations. And we have made a relationship between the normative standards and the pillars with the help of dimensions, which are meaningful and expressive categories and measures with the help of indicators. And based on this framework, conceptual framework in this figure, we have developed the foundation of the social futuring index. It means that we have the 4 normative standards, as you can see: peace and security as the basement, attachment, care, and balance in a hierarchical order. At the same time, we have the 4 pillars: dimensions of ecological geopolitical pillar, dimensions of technological pillar, dimensions of socio-economic pillar, dimensions of cultural pillar. And we have developed a so-called metrics structure of our social futuring index. And we have identified the 9 different dimensions in the crossings of 1 normative standard and 1 or 2 pillars. These dimensions are peace and safety, assets, and functionality in the field of peace of security, attachment, followed by patriotism, family, and spirituality, care with the dimensions of self-reliance and material advancement, and finally, on the top, balance in terms of well-being and generativity. And each of these dimensions, each of these 9 different dimensions, closely related to different normative standards on the one hand and related to different pillars on the other, can be measured by 3 to 5 different indicators. We have selected the indicators as well. Here are the definitions of the 9 dimensions. I will share the PowerPoint presentation, of course, with the participants of the conference, so you can read the definitions. I will not go into the details. And let's conclude with the Social Futuring Index, or the foundations of the Social Futuring Index, and with some general concerns about this index. This is, as I mentioned, a country-level index. At the moment, we have developed this index for the OECD countries. It means that we have 36 countries at the moment on the list, and we will publish this index in the fall semester. We plan to publish it even today in the Brain Bar conference at Corvinus University, but unfortunately, it had been rescheduled for the autumn, so we are not able to present the whole stuff at the moment, only the foundations of the index and the foundations of our approach. We have official data from OECD, from World Bank, and from other sources. As I mentioned, we have these 4 pillars based on the different kinds of expected changes. Social futuring as a conclusions is a conceptually unique approach to the social sciences. It has a specific normative framework, as you could say. It presupposes self-conscious and self-constituting social entities with a common goal. This was my presentation regarding the concept of social futuring and the foundations of Social Futuring Index. Thank you very much for your attention. If you visit our website.
Jött egy kérdés a izéből, de most átadom a szót.
If you visit our Social Futuring Center's website, you can download many publications in English and in Hungarian, and also you can watch presentations which was recorded. Thank you again for your attention, and I will react for your feedbacks and questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask you to give back the host role for sharing the opportunity for the next presenter. Before I give the floor for our next presenter, I would like to gently remind you with the time with some knocking a glass this way. So I ask the presenters, if you listen this sound, it means that you will have 2 more minutes. We would like to keep our track of time. So now I would like to call to the floor.
Unfortunately, I was not able to give the host to my colleague at the moment. I need some time to find.
If you click on my picture, on the top right corner, you will see a blue button with 3 dots. And clicking on that, there's a menu with, in the middle, make host function. Okay.
I gave it back to you.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you again for your very interesting and inspiring lecture. And I think that many questions will be put in the question sections. Now I would like to give the floor to Professor Ozan Saritas, who is professor for innovation strategy, and he's working for Higher School of Economics, Institute for Statistical Studies and Economics of Knowledge in Moscow. And his background is started in architecturing and went to project management to reaching management areas. And now for many years ago, he's working in the research field of future research. Before I give him the floor, I will show you again the semantic code for the word cloud. And I would like to share you my screen with the temporary results. So this is how we are right now. These are the keywords came during the first lecture, and I really suggest you to live with this opportunity to contribute with your feedback, with your keywords regarding that what you are thinking is most important in this topic. And now I would like to give the floor to our next presenter. Yes.
Okay.
Professor Saritas, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Ferenc, and many thanks, colleagues who are organizing this event in Budapest. And particular thanks to Dr. Özdemir, who invited me to take a part at this event of this very respectable project. So I'm very glad to be with you here today. Without taking too long, probably I'll just start my presentation. So I'll see how I can share my screen. So, well, today, you know, we are going through some very extraordinary times in many ways. So we understand that thinking about the future has become much more critical and much more important. Actually, I think this was also a time, or this has been also a time where we can explain people in the quickest way what uncertainty is, why we cannot predict the future, why there are different scenarios about the future, and so many futures concepts which we couldn't normally explain to the public to many hours can be explained during this time in a very fast way, because people really experience in their lives. They are facing great uncertainty. They don't know about tomorrow. So they understand that it is very crucial to think about the future. So considering that we have a mixed group of audience in here, I think it would be a good idea to give a little bit of a background on what we are talking about. So the presentation will be about designing the future in the time of pandemic. So I will touch nouns, unknowns, and wildcards which exist during this time. Before doing that, I'll just give a little background on Foresight. So first of all, why are we concerned about the future? We see that actually simply because it is too costly not to do so. So we are going through some times where social life is stopped, economic life is stopped, and it has so many different destructive consequences on our society. If there was a foresight, if there was future thinking, probably we could avoid a number of negative developments we have experienced during this process. So we have been imprisoned in our homes and places with very limited activity. And so many people are also still on the street because they are thinking that they have to continue their lives, because if they don't work, they will die. So if they don't die from the virus itself, they will die from hunger. So they have a very tough choice to make. So it is very costly not to think about the future. Thinking about the future helps us in many ways. It enables innovation, helps us setting priorities for the future. We optimize our use of resources. We think in innovative ways and different ways. We learn from experience, and we also have an opportunity to design common futures together. And we look into the future to detect some wildcards and weak signals, which have some indications from today and which require some action. Remember that Foresight is not only thinking about the future and living the future there. Foresight is also acting, so connecting the future with the present and planning your actions in the long, medium, and short terms, and formulate necessary policies and strategies for action from the present day. Foresight is not a new concept. It has been there. It is a part of human characteristic. So it is actually inside of all of us. So we always think about the consequences of our actions, the future consequences. And then we started seeing that our individual foresight capacity has been brought together in order to form institutional foresight activities. A number of foresight studies have been undertaken for the purpose of using technology for defense, for economic purposes, for example, during the 1970s, to building up innovation systems, national, regional innovation systems, and then later times to use science and technology for all sorts of social, economic, and environmental purposes. More recently, we saw that actually foresight has been very much characterized by increasing frequency of wildcard strokes and surprises. So these are now becoming new normals of our lives. And the evolution continues. We see that there's a rapid scientific and technological development and emerging of data, use of machines, artificial intelligence, and all other technologies. Besides giving, having all these threats, these are giving us all sorts of opportunities to deal with them in the longer run. But as I said, it's not only enough to think about the future, it is enough, it's also important to act based on our future's thinking. At the moment, we have the number of drivers of change shaping the future. So we are experiencing a growing up global demand for products and services. As the demand grows up, things get scarce. So increasing demand for water, food, energy, and natural resources. And at the same time, they gain value. They become more expensive as they are finite and they have to be shared. So these are all giving rise to some concerns about sustainability, security, with potential social, economic, and political conflicts in the world. So an answer to this challenge is going innovative. So advancements in science, technology, innovation, increasing public and private R&D, growing social awareness of these grand challenges, and availability of data and analytics methods will help us to overcome these challenges. We are constrained, as I said. Now, it is actually a very dramatic picture. So we are dealing with the immediate issue of pandemic right now, but we expect that there's a bigger picture behind it. And the pandemic only has triggered the development, the future development of, for example, some problems related to water demand, for example, which will increase 55% in the next 2-3 decades to come. We will need 60% more food. We will need 37% more energy. So where to get all this from? While we are treating our planet not in the best manner. So 52% of our agricultural land is affected by moderate and severe degradation. But at the same time, we have a number of opportunities, as I said, to address these issues. there are a number of technologies and there are a number of developments. So we have new information sources that we can monitor our resources. We can look down to our planet and collect a number of data about it. We can look up on the sky and also explore potential resources outside the planet. We've seen very exciting developments in the past few days with the private space launches. We are more and more interconnected. So there are 5G technologies, but we are moving into the technologies which will enable wiring brains and their computational powers. And we are going into some new ecosystem of integrated devices. Not only devices, we are moving from actually the Internet of Things into Internet of Everything with human in the loop systems, converging human and machine intelligence together, which will open some new opportunities for us. And during this time, the nature of innovation is also changing. So we are actually making the future a reality so that people can experience what is going to happen in the future through some artificial reality, virtual reality, and other technologies. You can touch, you can feel, and you can smell what's going to happen. Our infrastructure is also developing. So we are using some new technologies for governance, for decision-making, and we are talking about smart cities, renewable energies, autonomous vehicles. So our infrastructure is also improving during this time. And industry. We see that we are talking about an industrial revolution, although this topic seems to be on the side at the moment, but it is actually going to come back and very strong. So all the production technologies, industrial robotics, additive manufacturing, and then also robots in our lives, and other technologies which enable us interacting with each other through social media, and then sharing economy, sharing of our limited resources, and then using technologies like blockchain to make sure that we can have more equal, more democratic, and more secure access to resources, and then make decisions according to that. The reason I put all these technologies in one picture is that in normal times, we talk about one or two of these technologies. But we should know that the future will be actually shaped by a combination of them. So there will be a number of developments. There will be a number of exciting and interesting technologies, scientific revolutions, and at the same time, new and emerging challenges. So the future will certainly be different by considering this ecosystem of new challenges and technologies emerging. So all this actually tell us that we need foresight for our decision making. So foresight has been there for several decades already. It has been integrated in many countries in policy and strategy making processes, in governments, in corporations, in other organizations, international organizations, for example. And certainly we will continue doing foresight, especially thinking that we are experiencing some uncertain times. This is because the future is not only a continuum of the past and past dynamics, but can be shaped by our choices and actions. And therefore, we cannot predict the future because there's a human element in the system, and humans and societies don't always behave in a most rational way. That's why we are talking about uncertainty. There's not one possible future only. We are talking about multiple futures, uncertainty. And this is actually not a bad thing in foresight terms. Uncertainty in foresight terms is an advantage for us because it gives us a possibility space to design new futures. It's an empty sheet that we can write, that we can visualize a desirable future vision. So by considering this, we can say that foresight and future scenarios involve both rational analysis and at the same time subjective judgment, which is based on evidence, the best evidence and expertise available, creativity, participation, to explore trends, drivers of change, weak signals, and those wildcards. So following this background, let's come to our present time and what's happening around us. I will start with a small quiz, which will be wildcard quiz. So the question is, which hit may have a greater impact on the planet? An asteroid, size of the Empire State Building. If you are following the news these days, there are some asteroids passing nearby. So this may certainly give a great impact. We always talk about actually some asteroid hits when we try to give some examples of wildcards. And we see that this is not very unlikely. So this is very likely. So if you look at the NASA and other kind of organizations engaged in space research, you will see that they are nowadays, as of today, yesterday, and maybe tomorrow too, talking about some of these asteroids. So is an asteroid a cause of a great impact on the planet, or a virus, which is a microscopic kind of sized entity, and it may also, if it hits, it may also have a great impact on the planet. Or the great hit will come from some policymakers with particular hairstyles. So which hit may have a greater impact on the planet? The biggest hit on the planet may come from ignorance. So I will talk about the ignorance now, which is actually showing that it is not only about the lack of foresight, but even if we had foresight, we had ignored to take actions on this topic. So we can talk about several types of ignorance under several types of uncertainties. So in the world, we are talking about now events which can be known or unknown. But at the same time, there are some events which are known knowns. These are the events that we know already. And there are also events which are known unknowns, which we know that we don't know. And there are events which are unknown now, so we don't know, or we ignore that we know them. There are also events which are unknown, that we don't know what we don't know. So this is a picture, a framework built on Johari window, psychology researchers by Luft and Ingham. They have suggested this framework, but it became more popular when Donald Rumsfeld used this in 2002 about the lack of evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And later we used this framework to explain 3 types of ignorance, which would be ignorance due to unexpected causal relationships of emerging situations, unknown, because we don't know actually, but situations emerge, and then with a systemic and causal relationship, they may cause some other unexpected consequences. Ignorance of known risks that we are aware of. So we know that there are some risks, but we ignore them. These are known unknowns. And ignorance due to pretending not to know about. So we are pretending that we don't know about some of the events, which are unknown now. So if we come to the COVID issue, we see that actually ignorance is the biggest enemy of foresight, because COVID-19 exemplifies 3 levels of ignorance. In terms of likelihood and timing of the event, which is a known unknown. We knew that there were pandemics, but we didn't know about the likelihood and timing of the event. In terms of the magnitude of the pandemic, which is an unknown known, we knew that if pandemic is a pandemic, then it will have a great geographical coverage in the world. And we kept ignoring this basically, and it became unknown now. And there are also unknown unknowns, which are broader systemic impacts of the pandemic on society, economy, and technology. which we also experience right now. So because of this, some bigger waves will follow. Likelihood and timing of pandemics. Why this was known unknown? So this was not the first pandemic. So if you look at the past 100 years, so we see that there were a lot of different flus and pandemics going around the world, starting with the famous Spanish flu and followed by the others. And today we are talking about novel coronavirus COVID-19, which has claimed many lives around the world, and many people are infected, just over 6 million as of today. So we knew this. And there was a very nice report by the World Health Organization. The report was published in 2018, so new. And this was the time when we didn't talk about COVID-19. And please go and have a look at this report and see how all the things we have been talking about since the beginning of pandemic was already considered. And why, if we considered all these events and all these things, we didn't take any actions. Where was our foresight? If you look at this, the contents of this report, for example, you see that there are some interesting items. So this is a part of the table of contents. You see that there are a number of issues that we are talking about today, right? And then infectious diseases, and then there were some tips and checklists for responses and how to coordinate these responses, how to access to health information, how to communicate this risk with the others. And if you go down, you can see 21st century aspects of change and complicate risk communication, and how to make actually sure that we can protect. If you go to the bottom of the picture, you see that there were some ideas on protecting frontline respondents. So you know how many doctors, nurses, and medical personnel we lost during this time, and how we can confront the human resource crisis. So this is actually all there. And this report was just written a year before COVID-19 became evident in our lives. And there were a lot of unknown nouns. So we knew that actually pandemics might be caused by a number of factors, like social, technological, economic, environmental, political, values and cultures. A number of factors actually would make an epidemic a pandemic, a global pandemic. We were aware that we were having an aging population. We are living in urban areas where massive amounts of people come together, and our health services, we knew that they were not perfect yet. In many countries, it just became evident. And we also know that there are a number of technologies, again, which can help us to develop some responses, but why didn't we use them, or why didn't we put them in place so that they can be ready in the event, in the likelihood of such an event? And we also know that we are living in a global economic system. We have international value chains and the national economic systems, industrialization, all based on the concept of globalization, of interconnected production, interconnected economic relations and political relations. We are also aware that there are also challenges related to climate change, food and water availability, international relations, multipolar world, nation states, new governance systems. So these are all there. And international tourism. We knew how many people were traveling around the world at any point of time. Hundreds of thousands of flights are on the air in 24 hours time. And if such a pandemic starts, then how quickly it could be spread around the world. So we knew about the pandemic of the magnitude of the pandemic, but we pretending like it doesn't exist. And some unexpected consequences. We know that there are so many systems. Our systems are cascaded and systemically related. We realized quickly that the issue of pandemic is not a health issue only. It's an economic issue. It's a political issue. It has environmental aspects and political consequences. So here is a thought-provoking slide that Iraqi government launches invasion to bring democracy to America. So we know that actually there are big social disturbances now in the country. So maybe some other countries will attempt to bring democracy to the country, democracy back home. So there are a lot of unexpected consequences. Of course, joke aside, we need to consider the systemic relationships between all these different systems in our lives. As I said, social systems, economic systems, technological systems, environmental, political systems, our cultures, these are all interrelated and interlinked. So we need to use our foresight. We need to get ready for nouns and unknowns. First of all, we definitely need to analyze emerging trends and challenges. We need to develop alternative futures and scenarios, and then develop some indicators to monitor the evolution of events and then to understand the direction of developments and think about their future impacts. We need to develop some visions and priorities for the desirable future in order to get to, again, to the future that we want to, while avoiding the negative consequences of other scenarios. And we need to develop some strategies and roadmaps for long, medium, and short terms. And we need to act, and we need to implement our decision. So this was the main component lacking in our foresight and in our policy-making activities. And we also monitor, evaluate, and update our foresight studies. So we need to do this through participation and engagement. We definitely, this is the time, we definitely need stakeholder dialogue, mutual learning, and collective visioning. And then we need to make sure that this becomes a decision-making culture and strategy-making culture in our society, because we cannot leave decision-making and strategy-making only in the hands of a few people. So we need to make sure that they are using evidence, using science and technology, and then monitoring again the developments and trends in the world, and making much more informed decisions by engaging necessary stakeholders in the process. Because this is only the first way. So everybody thinks that they'll be happy when the pandemic is over, but there are some other issues to expect in the future. There's an economic crisis agenda, which is getting very hot and hot every day. There's an agenda in terms of global and national security. There's an agenda in terms of international migration, natural disasters, earthquake, urbanization, climate change, energy, food, and water. So while looking at a small wave, we should make sure that we don't miss the big wave. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was really an inspiring presentation again, with many new ideas as well, and a different perspective of the topic. While I would like to encourage the colleagues to put your questions into the chat box, and my colleague put them together for the question answer session. I would like to call the third keynote speaker of our event today, Patrick van der Duin. He's now Executive Director of the Netherlands Studies Center of Technology Trends. He formerly acted as a professor of future research and trend watching at the Fundis Academy for Creative Industries. And previously he worked for Delft University for 15 years. So I'm really glad to see you here, and I try to pass you the floor right now, and please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Many thanks for giving me the virtual floor. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. To understand is something different, but good to see you all indeed in a rather strange context. Indeed, my name is Patrick van Duin. I'm currently Managing Director of the Netherlands Studies Center for Technology Trends. it's an honor and hopefully also a pleasure to give a presentation on this conference. A conference part of a project I was involved with at the early beginnings, even before it was indeed a project, because I used to be an associate professor at Fontys University. And indeed with a couple of people who had the idea to set up this project. So we applied 2 times for it and we failed 2 times. Then I left Fontys and then the 3rd attempt was successful. So somehow leaving me leaving Fontys has been very good for attaining this program, this project. So congratulations with that also. I now come to hopefully will share my screen with you. If you all can see the slides. So indeed, I was asked by the organization to say a few words on Foresight, and I thought, well, what would be better to say something about the current crisis we are in. Actually, when the COVID-19 crisis started.
Oké, szerettem most megmutatni. Szerettem most megmutatni, de valami élet azért csak van róla.
I hear someone talking as well, so maybe someone can close his microphone.
Ferenc, it's your microphone.
Maybe he can give the presentation. Okay. So as we all know, somewhere in February, March, this crisis started, and I was thinking about what to do. And my first personal response was not to do anything, because I thought personally it would be a bit awkward to start thinking about the future, the long-term future, in a period in which many people are so occupied with taking care of the crisis, making sure that it will not take too long. In the Netherlands, and I think it also will hold for other countries, a lot of people were involved in providing healthcare, in looking for a possible medicine. So it was very much about taking care of operational problems. It was very much about thinking about the current times, and it would be almost be a obscene luxury to think about the long term, to think about the period after the crisis. Nevertheless, Foresight is in my heart and in my mind, and I'm indeed managing a organization that is focused on the long term. So naturally, you start thinking about what will happen after this crisis. What will be the long term? How will society look like later on? Also because, let alone my personal motives, we received a lot of questions about how do you think about the long-term future? And especially from our members, those organizations who support my study center, they were asking me questions about, Patrick, what could be the long term of this crisis? How will we will get back to normal, whatever that may be? And will we ever get back to normal? And how will this normal situation might look like in the future? So then you're almost forced to think about the long term. And after a certain period of time, I let go of my personal objectives and I start thinking about indeed what might happen after the crisis. And I didn't do that alone. I did it with a short group of people. You can see it here on the slide. And we decided to make some scenarios about the future. I think that Oscar just more or less explained what scenarios are and how they are related to other types of tools and methods of foresight. So we thought about, let's explore that period, that possible period after the crisis. So we didn't have much time also because, lots of other organizations are also thinking about this period. Maybe they also were more or less, getting away from this difficulty of thinking about the future in terms of a crisis. So there was also, at least in the Netherlands, I saw a lot of organizations thinking about the long-term future. So there was almost a kind of competition. Who is the first one with coming up with scenarios for after the COVID-19 crisis? So we decided to make a small project. with 8 people, all experts in the field of scenarios. And normally you would do that with a larger group of people. You would have all kinds of workshops. You would interview people. You would read a lot of literature. But now we said we're going to do a kind of light version of these post-COVID-19 scenarios. So also we decided not to experiment very much. So what I'm going to present to you is just a very down-to-earth, classical 2x2 scenario matrix where we try to explore different possible futures. So there was no room, no time, also not really necessary, also no need to experiment. We focused on the Netherlands, but hopefully during the presentation, maybe you also could say, well, this might hold for the Netherlands, but also maybe this could apply for my own country, or perhaps from our own region. I mean, the thing about COVID is that it hits every country, every part of the world. It does not discriminate between people, scholars, between nations, between rich or poor. This virus is important and hits every people. Nevertheless, we, coming from the Netherlands, we thought we took a kind of Dutch perspective, and let's see how that also relates to possible other countries as well, or other regions perhaps. What else can I say? Oh yeah, we had an assumption. Normally, if you make scenarios, you have some kind of time horizon, and it's always a very relevant part of your scenario project, the discussion and a decision about what will be the time horizon. And normally, I always use this. It's not really an algorithm, but you can say, well, you can predict the future to a certain extent. You can say, well, I know more or less what will happen next month or next year. But at a certain moment, depending on the type of topic we are making scenarios about, there's too much uncertainty to make a prediction. And then you start making different scenarios. You try more to explore the scenarios. In this particular case, it was very difficult for us, at least, to decide on what will be the right time horizon. And maybe there's not even one time horizon, but maybe there's a kind of period to which you apply the scenarios to. So we thought, well, we have an assumption about what this will not be over in the summer. And also not this will be over at the end of 2020. And even we expect that this whole crisis situation more or less will continue next year. And maybe also in 2022. So more or less we focus on not on a specific time horizon on 1 year, but more on a kind of time period. So we've tried to focus on 2022 to 2025. As you can see on this title slide, we put the word after between brackets, because if you talk about scenarios after the crisis, your assumption is then there at a certain moment in time, this crisis will end. And which means that it's a very almost digital version of the future, meaning that from a certain moment on, we are no longer in the crisis. And that's a difficult assumption. That's why we put the after between the brackets. And also because we had a discussion about how important it will be to whether we find a cure or not, whether we find a vaccine that will solve this COVID-19 disease. And as you know from your own newspapers or wherever media you're consulting, it's not sure when this vaccination will be found, even if it will be found. There are many diseases where we don't have a vaccination for, we don't have a vaccine for that. So that might also hold for the COVID-19. So that's why we decided to somehow to skip this discussion about whether we will find a vaccine or not, and when we will find. But somehow the whole after means that somehow we expect, and as we mentioned, or I mentioned the year 2025, that somehow in a certain moment of future time, this COVID-19 will be part of our society. I'm not saying that it will be accepted, but somehow we have to live with it. This vaccine will never leave this planet again. We will have to deal with it some way or the other. And indeed, it would be much easier for our daily life if we would find a vaccine. But once again, given that we don't know whether we will ever find a vaccine or when we will find it, still we would, define that after crisis period in a much broader way, meaning that we expect that in a certain moment in time, somehow we will manage to more or less to deal with this situation. That does not mean that we will go back to normal. I'm not sure how it is in your country, but our Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, said a very interesting thing about the new normal, and also based on this notion that the old life, the old normal, will never return again. And that stirred a lot of discussion within the Netherlands. Some people were very a bit disappointed about it. They want to have to get back to old life. But somehow, more or less, now we see also in the Netherlands, and once again, you have to find out for yourself how that is in your own country. In the Netherlands, we see that this discussion about the new normal is a very vital one. And sometimes also people are a bit relieved about that somehow this crisis might also give us an opportunity to maybe to rebuild our society, or to don't make the mistakes we had before the crisis. They have this saying, I think it was from an advisor from former President Obama, never waste a good crisis. And it's interesting also to notice how people will respond to the new situation. To give you one last example about it, recently in the Netherlands, a study was being done. People were interviewed about how they will deal with public transport in the future. How will they use public transport after the crisis? And to give you an indication, 20% of the respondents said, well, I'm not going to use the train anymore as often or as frequent as before. People are more and more getting used to working at home, learning at home, and they are rather pleased with that. So they're saying, well, I'm not going to my work 5 days per week. Maybe I go 3 days per week to my work, and 2 days per week I'm staying at home. It's always difficult to know whether that actually will be true. The moment maybe perhaps that the crisis is over, or, well, you know what I mean now. People might go again 5 days per week to their work. But nevertheless, if it's not 20%, but if suppose it's 5%, if 5% of the Dutch people will change their transport routines significantly, then we will have any traffic jams anymore, to give you an example. So those expectations people will have about the future might indeed have an impact about our future society, once again, after the crisis. So we did an experiment. We thought that we spoke about the vaccine. We spoke about the new normal. And now maybe it's time to say something about how this new normal might look like in different scenarios. Now I have to do something. Let me do, yeah. So basically what we did is we built a kind of structure, well, at least this presentation. I will give a quick overview of the scenarios, kind of deepening, and also what will be the wind tunnel. Let me see whether this works. Can you see my slides or not?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
We can see that, yes.
Okay, there we go. So now you see these 4 scenarios or not?
We can see that, no problem.
Okay, okay. Okay, so we once again 4 very classical scenarios based on a very classical method. 2 scenario axes that are have a high impact and cause a lot of uncertainty. So we decided to take a kind of economical axis and also a kind of societal axis. The horizontal axis, as you can see, is this trade-off between freedom and safety. At least in the Netherlands, we have noticed that the whole lockdown issue is partly about, you know, handing in some freedom and hoping to get back a little bit of collective safety. At least in the Netherlands, it was surprising that, given that the Netherlands is, you know, the Dutch people are very fond on their personal freedom, that many people quite readily accepted the fact that they had less personal freedom. They were not allowed to go to the shops, or were not allowed to go to bars, or they had to stay indoors. But many people actually accepted it quite readily. So on the other hand, now we see with all those exit strategies where we have a less lockdown, or less intelligent lockdown, we see that more and more people also now much more valuing their freedom. So there's a kind of trade-off between freedom and safety. Some people will accept very easily that they have less freedom in order to gain more safety. On the other hand, some people will take the risk. They will say, well, maybe if I have more freedom, if I can go out more than before, if I can do whatever I like, more or less, then I have more freedom. But on the other hand, then I run a risk of getting the COVID-19 virus. However, somehow they accept that, they make that trade-off, and they prefer their personal freedom above safety. The other axis is about, you know, open and closeness. I see still that we use the Dutch word for it, but it's an open versus a closed economy. And now we're very much in a situation, at least in the Netherlands, we have a very open society and an open economy. And now, as you can see, of all the European governments and also elsewhere taking measures in order to prevent the spreading of the virus. The overall general strategy is to close things, to close cities, to close people, to close countries. And to us, it was really, it's very, very impactful, whether that will happen in the future or not, whether that will continue, whether we stick to our closeness, or whether, once again, as before, perhaps we open up our society. And now we can see, at least in Western Europe, that a lot of people are, you know, planning their holidays, and they're eagerly looking to which countries will open up their borders in June or July. So, but still, if there will be a second wave, and I think Oscar rightfully pointed to that, we might go back to a more closed economy or to a more closed society. So those are the two scenario axes, with freedom above safety, safety above freedom, and on the vertical axis is the openness versus the closeness. So we have four different scenarios. We have a business scenario, a business normal, as we call it. We have a careful normal, we have an independent normal, and we have a confident normal. And this basically shows you the four different scenarios. So in that global scenario, the business scenario, maybe that scenario most resembles actually the situation before the crisis. And once again, we're not saying that we're going back to the old business. We're not claiming that, but if you have to choose one scenario that kind of resembles the old situation, then I would choose this business normal scenarios. So this is the combination of an open society, an open economy, and people preferring freedom above safety. So this is a kind of optimistic scenarios where you know, where there's this openness. People are used to working and learning at home. Still, people have some fears. I mean, there's a lot of freedom in these scenarios. And if there would be another crisis, and that could be the second wave of the COVID-19, or as Oscar once again rightly said, maybe other types of crisis, climate change, or energy crisis, or economic, or perhaps, as we see in the US right now, political crisis, will our individual safety net be strong enough to hold against those new type of crises? But once again, this scenario, this global scenario, is a very economic scenario. It's a very much a entrepreneurial scenario, and what we call also, we call it innovation for sustainability. So once again, you know, if you talk about sustainability, the question is always, at least in the Netherlands, how will this respond after? How will this develop itself after the crisis? And we think that we assume in this scenario that the sustainability trend will develop, but not because of all kinds of green motives, but more for actually for economic motives. The upper right scenario, which is a combination of an open society together with people preferring safety above freedom is what we call a kind of European scenario. People are very much, focused on healthcare. And in order to ensure that collective health, people rely very much on the government taking care of things, and also making sure that the right data is available there. So people are very much, trying to look, where can I live my life? Can I go abroad or not? And for instance, in this scenario, you need to have some kind of corona passport in order to get over, to cross borders. You don't have that, you have to stay indoors. So this is very much focused on, indeed, as the word said, a careful, normal scenario, being careful about being careful about things is very important. The lower right corner is a combination of a closed economy or a closed society, and also people valuing safety above freedom, personal freedom. This is almost a nationalistic scenarios where, once again, people very much value their own local, their national area. It's a bit, you try to be self-sustaining on a national level. You try to be independent. To give you an example, in the Netherlands, there's a discussion going on. Lots of people are a bit frightened or scared that in order to have vaccines or other healthcare supplies, we have to import those from other countries, which normally would function very good. And we in the Netherlands, we're a very open society. But in case of this COVID-19 issue, that might be a problem indeed, that you're too much dependent from other countries. That's why in this scenario, people and also the governments are very much in favor of becoming independent from other countries and take care of your own stuff. In the confident scenario, the confident normal scenario is the upper left scenario, the combination of a closed economy and a closed society. I'll take a look at my watch, which is very much also focused on, valuing personal freedom above safety. This is a very local scenario where people are really taking care in their own communities and really much value their own freedom. And really, the biggest fear people have is indeed, do we have to give up the freedom we have acquired for the new crisis? I have 2 minutes, I hear. So I will wrap up. So these are basically the 4 scenarios. These are very general scenarios. We're now very much working on trying to elaborate on these scenarios for different topics. And also, once again, these are very, let's say, Dutch scenarios from the Netherlands. So you have to figure out for yourself to what extent this also more or less could apply to your own personal situation. What else can I say about these scenarios? Well, you can use it for winterling, for developing strategies. Hopefully they will inspire people to think about new products, about innovation, about new policies, about new strategies. And basically it's a kind of common background to present, to use, to think about that possible periods after the post-COVID-19 Corona crisis, if there ever will be a new after, but I think that's the assumption we have. Going back to I think that's all. I'm looking at the my watch. So it's 11:15. I think this is all for now. This is just to give you a small glimpse of what we did about scenarios, and hopefully it will inspire you to become a bit more optimistic, perhaps, about the period after the crisis. Thank you very much. Let's see. French, I'd like to give the word to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I would like to have the host roll back, and then I will share my screen with the word cloud. And then I would like to ask our keynote speakers to look at it and then check if they can comment.
See how I do this, because
if you click on my camera picture on the top right corner, there's a blue button with 3 dots. Click on that, and there is a make host.
Okay. Here we go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you for your really interesting presentation. I'm convinced that we should have been scheduled significantly more time slot for all the keynotes, because lots of ideas with limited time to explain. So I think that it would be worth to continue with the comments. But right now, this is the Menti word cloud that participants put together with your terms. So as you know, that word cloud works the way that the number of appearance of the given term higher, that is having a more central and more big capital. So focus is in Trump and social featuring, but here all the keynote speakers first is the floor to comment what we got, please.
Can I say something, Ferenc? Or
please, absolutely. Yep.
Well, what you say, we see in the middle, we see Trump.
Yep.
And let's not make things too personal. Of course, it's about Trump, but it's about, you know, it's about, I think, politics in general.
Mm.
And politics in general during this crisis, taking care of things and the performance of governments. And once again, in the Netherlands, I'm really curious how it is in other countries. In Netherlands, I mean, the government is always being criticized, and rightfully, of course. I mean, that's at least in the Netherlands, that's our second nature. However, in the Netherlands, people are pretty much happy with how the government is operating, how it is taking care, at least, of the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, it can always, we can do it better, and they can do it better. But I think it will be, once again, coming back from my perspective about thinking about after the crisis. I think how the world will look like after crisis will very much depend on how we evaluate the performance, the decisions of our governments in taking care of this crisis. And as I see it right now, the Trump being in the middle, for me, that's a symbol of that that not many people have a very much confidence in how the government is taking care of things. And maybe the Trump is a bit broader, not only the COVID-19, but political crisis in general. That might be the case, but it also proves that for the future, the government will be a very central social entity, to use that phrase, to govern our future.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you very much.
Can I just add a couple of words on this?
Sure.
I think the word Trump there probably doesn't represent the Trump as such, so himself. No. So that's a kind of a particular point of view and a particular way of making policies, which became like far from the reality, science and technology, from evidence, and going away from respecting to data, information, knowledge. So I think the biggest probably thing that people are against is this sort of thinking. So we should probably at some point come back to science and technology, because we realize that when we are ill, we will need doctors and we will need hospitals. We will need necessary infrastructure. So this sort of kind of populist policies don't necessarily help. We need to think about the infrastructures, education systems, build necessary skills and capacities, and then really understand the realities of the world and how to deal with them. And doing this in a kind of another top-down approach, like I know everything, but with the bottom-up, with consultations, with the broader constituents of the society, and by representing their interest and discussing their expectations and coming to a consensus. So that word actually is there representing for the need for more evidence-based, science-based, and consensus-based policy and strategy making. And the other words are also very relevant, of course, uncertainty, as we know, we are not sure. So that's why we are talking about scenarios probably. We are not sure what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next winter, for example. Will there be a second wave, as just Patrick mentioned? So there are a number of scenarios that we need to be prepared for. And all the other concepts which are mentioned in here are equally important to me. Sustainability, not only environmental, but social and economic sustainability are also important. And all the other social featuring, as you just mentioned earlier, and Zoltan also mentioned social featuring, and he put a great emphasis on that. So these are the things that we need for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to give a short feedback from my side as well. I think it was very important to listen to Özkan's presentation, which in other important things put the emphasis on uncertainty. We faced also this problem, uncertainty, and we treated this problem with focusing on the present, what to do today to be able to meet the uncertain future tomorrow. So our task is not to predict the future. This is one of the motto of our research group, but to focus on how to prepare the unknown future. You had this differentiation between unknown, whatever. I liked it very, very much. So the social futuring approach focuses on what to do today to be able to meet the future, whatever the future will be. We know that we can speak about future only in plural. There are many possible future. They are less, but also more desired futures among us. But let's give you a certain example. If you have a stable economy, whatever the future will be, you have more chances to meet the global crisis, global economic crisis. We cannot predict the global economic crisis, but we can say that if we have an economy with this and this and this characteristics, we have more chance to overcome the coming crisis. Whatever the climate change will be, if you have a greener economy and greener society, you have better chances. So I am happy that I don't want to speak about why Trump is in the center. We can interpret it in different ways, but I'm happy that social futuring got some interest from your side, and also the social futuring index. So what we are willing to do is to try to analyze social entities, different social entities, because we have other projects on cities in Hungary, how to measure their futuring, city futuring. So the strategy towards future is what we can do now and how we can shape our economy, culture, society, whatever today to meet this ignorant and uncertain future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that this chart opens many new topics and ways to comment and start to think in different areas. My general impression is that if you are looking at the workload itself, you can see that the outcut of this chart are the common words which we previously used quite often, like independence or interculturality and technology. So that means that talking about future needs a different vocabulary with thinking. New terms come up and we have to get accustomed to use and to think with them. And it needs a significant culture change in, of course, in the politicians' mindset as well, and in the citizens' mindset as well. Now we have some minutes to put some questions from the audience side. Our colleague, Professor Vilmos, was collected from the chat box, and then he showed some questions. Rest of them we will be put to the we will put it to the homepage of the conference, and then we can answer there. So Vilmos, please show up some questions.
Good morning, everybody. Just from the chat room, that our colleague that Eddie Van Hemerick from KDG Antwerp University just asked to Patrick that 170 Dutch scientists published a manifest with the 5 concrete proposals to organize a Dutch society after Corona. Does the government listen to their proposal? What's your point of view? Please, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you very much. I haven't seen that. I saw the comment in the chat. I haven't read that document, well, maybe there's. I don't know whether the government will listen to them. I mean, that's not up to me. What I do know is that in the beginning of the crisis, so somewhere in February, March, the Dutch government very much relied on the social health planning agencies. So we have some experts, they're located in certain departments, and they were advising our Prime Minister very strongly about how to deal with this crisis. And more or less the government of our Prime Minister said, okay, we listen to those scientists and we accept that because this is a very difficult issue. We haven't seen this before. We don't have the expertise. As a politician, we don't have the expertise. Okay, let's rely on those experts working for the government. Personally, I think that worked out pretty good. And now we are getting more ahead of the crisis, so to say. So now, our Prime Minister is now actually a bit more exploring, saying also we do not, in our policy to deal with this crisis, we're not only looking at healthcare issues, we also look at the economic aspects of it. And in the beginning of the crisis, when they were developing new policies to cope with the crisis, they admitted to say, well, we don't have the knowledge, but we do listen to society. So they try to balance the advices from experts with the general opinion. In the beginning, they more relied on the experts and less on the general opinion, but now the turn is a bit tiding. The tide is turning, I have to say. They're more now listening less to the experts, try to broaden up the experts, not only health experts, but also experts on societal issues, on economic issues, on technological issues. So they're more or less trying to broaden up this spectrum of where they get the expertise from. Nevertheless, they're still very much focused on coping current issues, and more or less they try to think about indeed the period after the crisis. But they're not as far as this initiative that this person from Antwerp is suggesting. They're not as far as yet to think about later on. I do know there are some initiatives to think about the Netherlands after the crisis. So indeed, for now, the Dutch government is predominantly on short-term thinking, and they're kind of slow now in going to the long term. That's correct.
Thank you very much. We have, I think, only 2 minutes for one more question to keep the schedule.
Okay, I have.
Please.
Okay, I like to ask a question to Professor Zoltan Santo, that how do you see the role of human factors, especially in the area of fourth industrial revolution, in the social futuring approach? especially think about the proactive, active, and reactive points. How do you see human factors?
Thank you very much for the question, Vilmos. I would say that when we say that we focus on social entities, it does not mean that we forget human actors or agents. As I mentioned in my presentation, personhood is a key factor in our approach. We define social entities, whether it is a country or an organization or a city, in terms of socially embedded agents or persons. So what I want to say to your question is that human factors is crucial in social futuring. One aspect is that when we are facing the uncertain future, we have to interpret somehow the situation. And of course, interpretation and explanation and understanding of different social, economic, political, geopolitical, environmental, whatever situations belong to the humans, belong to the persons, belongs to the agents. As it was mentioned in the earlier question, the Dutch scientist wrote a proposal. It's of course about human factors. So in the interpretation on the one hand, and also, and it was mentioned also by Oscar Sarita's presentation, when we are speaking about implementing or implementation of different strategies, focusing on the future challenges, of course, humans are who are implementing this kind of project. Of course, when we try to be proactive, we have different possibilities. China has other possibilities to make an impact on the geopolitical, or United States, of course, make an impact on the geopolitical changes in the future than, for example, Hungary, of course. In this term, human factors is one of the key factors, but the other factors are the population of a social entity, the size of a social entity, the power they have, whether it is a political power or an economic power. And let's go to the reactive form of social futuring when we are trying to manage risks, like in the pandemic situation. Of course, human factors is important. This dilemma about personal freedom and safety, as it was mentioned by Patrick, belongs to humans. But we can interpret both freedom and safety in collective terms at the same time, not only individual freedom and individual safety. And it shows that if you consider both the human factors and the social factors, you can have more promising results, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. These were great contributions. Now, according to our schedule, we should start to turn to the part 2, which are presentations and discussions with our project team members. The moderator of this session will be Figen Yildirim from our Turkish partner. So now the floor is yours now, and then please start your session.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's been great honor to be a moderator and to be one of the part of this project. Here is the second part of the Midway Conference, a part 2, and we'd like to have a partner speeches for this part. Our topic is more about how is the beneficial of this project for the all active committees like academics, industrial parties, students, teachers. So we're going to discuss and deal about that, how we are going to use this project, especially the content, according to the higher education system. So I'm very glad to introduce the precious partner speeches. And I'm going to firstly introduce my colleagues. On the behalf of the academics, G. Sigers from the KDG, University of Applied Sciences and Arts in Antwerp from Belgium, is going to make his speech. Welcome, G. And after that, we're going to have an industrial partners view from full energetic speeches from the Monica Wieger from Fontys Academy of Creative Industries from Tilburg, from Netherlands. And then Omid Lotfi is going to tell about the students' view from Budapest Metropolitan University from Hungary. And at the last, as a teacher, opinion and the future research education, she's going to tell about the and present about the details about the teacher's view. Irati, it's a little bit hard, Irati. Irati Agrea Squenaga from University of Basque Country from Spain. So main topic, hi Irati. Main topic is how is the content is beneficial for all committees and for all partners. So we're going to have 10 minutes speeches, and after that we will have the question and answers in 20 minutes. So let's start to discuss from the academics view by G. Sigers from KDG, University of Applied Sciences and Arts. Hi, G.
Thank you, Vigen. I'm honored to be here and to get the opportunity to introduce our findings and expectations about our Foresight project, on which we are working now for more than 2 years. I try to share my screen. Oh, that is at this moment not, I'm still disabled. Can you host me for the? Yeah, now I'm the host.
You can. Now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Now it will work, I guess. That is the wrong screen, I guess. I'll try it again. Something. What is the problem?
Het is zichtbaar nu, hè?
It's here. Ja. You can see
ja.
How to implement Foresight in our curriculum.
Ja, we do.
Okay. Then, okay. I lost my screen. Okay, I have it here. Okay. So, the topic of my speech is how to implement Foresight in our curricula. As the former speakers already told, our world is changing, and our world is changing fast. And that is especially in my topics. I'm busy with sustainable business in the Department of Economics and IT. Things are changing, of course, and in the past, there was one main thinking, one idea that economics has to do with ever more and more GDP, more production, more income, more profit, faster cars, bigger houses, and all that at always lowering costs. That kind of thinking became the dominant paradigm for almost all disciplines, and probably for the former century. In the 20th century, that was a good solution for that time because it brought a lot of welfare, mainly in the richer countries. But in the 21st century, clouds are gathering around the mountaintop, as you can see, and our visions, they become blurred. We are facing a lot of problems, like the former speeches already told us, climate change, laws in biodiversity. We can't eradicate diseases, no racism, growing inequality. And despite of this thinking of more and more, there are still more than 800 people living in poverty. So it's a system that needs to change. And our traditional economic system is questioned. For instance, in 2015, in the London School of Economics, students occupied the campus because they claimed another kind of economic education. In our university in 2016, the students offered a charter to our director to ask for another kind of a more environmental friendly kind of education. So we need to think in another way. Most of us has lost the faith in TINA. Maybe you heard about TINA. TINA stands for there is no alternative. Here we see Tina. Tina is walking on a rope. She's always going the same direction ahead, going higher and higher, but she's taking a big risk. And I think there are other possibilities. Let me introduce you to Tamara. Tamara stands for there are many alternatives ready and available. So Tamara, she looks ahead and she sees lots of opportunities. Tina is dead nowadays. We have to think creatively and we have to look for other futures, brighter futures. And that is what Foresight is about. How we can teach our students for that unknown future. The idea of the Foresight project is to create a methodology that makes our students future aware, that they believe that they have impact in the future so they can engage in today's society. And the ultimate goal of our project is that students come up with a future-proof business concept. And how do we do that? I'll try to explain it in a nutshell with this image. We put our students in a time traveling machine. And in a few weeks' time, they will travel from the now to future images, and they go back, and so we toss them between the present and the future during the methodology. Like I said, the goal is that they come up with a future-proof business concept and that they become more future-aware. As an appetizer, we ask our students to visualize and to draw their images about the future, and our goal, our horizon is 2050. For some students, it's hard. Or for instance, I was teaching at the Department of IT, and many of those technologists were afraid to draw an image. But nevertheless, they have to draw it because that is a kind of visualization to get a connection with the future. That is a starting point. They draw an image individually. The next step is we start looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. Because the Sustainable Development Goals, it is a good way to study the now, to study the challenges we are facing today. We let our students dig into one of those Sustainable Development Goals, and they have to discover this topic in depth. To do this, we let them work in teams of 4 to 5 students, for instance, on SDG 1. SDG 1 is extreme poverty. We try to mix the cultural background of our students. We try to mix the disciplines. That is very important, because doing this, they have to listen to other beliefs. They are confronted with other convictions, and they are forced to think out of their comfort zone, out of their small boxes. They can't make the future of their own, so they have to make it the future together. Studying this sustainable development goal, they have to develop a clear problem definition in which they take into account all actors, all parties, and they discuss the relevant values that are involved with it. We have some methodologies to do that. In the next step, they have to discover all kinds of signals of change. Many people, businesses, technologies, powers are already dealing with the problems they are facing. And those institutions, they are preparing the change. It is their duty to pick up as many as possible of these signals of change. And then, with the knowledge they have gained, they are challenged to think about all possible futures that may arise from the nowadays problems. And there are many possible futures. In the beginning, it's hard for the most groups to leave the nowadays world behind and to create a broad image of many futures. Of course, it's hard for our students because it asks a lot of creative thinking, and that's an important thing. Some of the futures they will come up with are more likely to happen than others. But the goal is that they choose one particular image about the future, the preferred future, the future they want to create. The preferred future means they also take into account all the different actors and all the relevant values. This future image, this image of 2050, has to be elaborated and visualized in a picture or a movie. And this visualization helps them to get a better insight into their preferable future. But now comes the hard work, because it's nice to dream. Now they have to try to realize this future. How do we do that? We take steps back. We come back from the future to tomorrow, and therefore we choose a transition path. For instance, development of new technologies, for instance, new legislations, another kind of education, and so on. And among this transition path, they define targets along, starting from 2050 to 2040, 2030, 2025, and finally today. Now we are back today in the now, and students have to make a concept on how they can start creating that future in 2050. To do that, students are forced to think 100 ideas. They have to figure out more than 100 ideas to start the trail to their transition path. They get different, several creative techniques to do that. And from 100 ideas, they have to select the very one best idea. And in this final stage, they elaborate this idea to a real business concept. And so the students have realized a future-proof business concept as a first stepping stone towards a better, a preferred future. That is a small idea about the methodology that was developed. The idea came from Christiane Hazelmans and Linda Hoffman at Fantis. I was really pleased to join them in this voyage. How can we implement that methodology in our curricula? We have run already several test phases, but the idea is you need some time. We did it in, for instance, in several sessions. We start with 5 preliminary meetings and 1 intensive week. That is what we did in Antwerp during our Foresight project. We've done it with the teacher before in one intensive week, and at my own department, we are running it now in a 6 week course of 4 hours per week. For the staff, it's rather expensive because you need at least one teacher for 30 students. In the last semester, I did a group of more than 100 students, and I was the only teacher. I can assure you that was a hard work, and some groups, they really got lost because you really need to get to be close to your students. You can create a standalone courses in your curriculum, or what we will do next year. Next year, we will use the Foresight methodology as a preparation for the business projects that our students are going to elaborate. From our project team, we will provide you with the necessary material at our website. You will find slides, canvases, rubrics, readers, and all of that is at our platform. So that is, I hope you have an idea about the methodology here. Let's stop with the words of Spirovska, the professor I met in Mannheim. She said, we are used to educate our students to become takers, mainly in economic departments. Well, let's change it and let's make them givers. Because we all have to jump in the pool. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, G. So as an academician, we can questioning that the traditional education system and the creative future thinking throughout the transition path of the today and the future. So it's really important to also be in a work on the what kind of future thinking, creative future thinking will be developed in the educational system. So it's a really interesting and a nice presentation. We really like to hear about and listen your presentations. We get used to in Tilburg and in Antwerp. So it was really a good chance to hear about thirdly this presentation, and it's nice. So now we will turn back to the industrial partners view and how can they contribute to the future research and the education in the higher education systems, intelligence into the this idea. Monica Wiegers Fontes, Academy for Creative Industries, and she's great. She's our energy in the project. So it's really important for us to hear her thoughts about the higher educations and the whole about the Foresight. Hi, Monica.
Thank you so much, Vegan. I'd like to ask Guy to give me the opportunity to share my screen.
I think the opportunity is G must give that, but yeah. I will try. Yes, G. Maybe. Yeah, I can give. Okay. Now I think you can do.
Yeah, I'm the host now. I see that. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Then I have to just write one. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is new for me. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope you can see everything, the slides and everything. I am very honored that I can say something here because I'm very proud of this project. And first of all, I want to mention two names. Guy already mentioned who are really the founding, I have to say, mothers of this whole project. And that are Linda Hofman and Christiane Hesemans. They were working and are working very hard on this method, Sustainable Futures. It was a backcasting method. And it was really nice to work together with them and still working together with them. I'm Monica Vega. I'm from Fontes Academy for Creative Industries in Tilburg, the Netherlands. And I'm going to tell something about how can industrial partners contribute to future research, education, and higher education. I want to thank Guy for his explanation of the method. It gives me more tools to explain to you what industrial partners can contribute for. I looked at the project goals of our project or of our Foresight project. And one of the most important goals was to improve the relationship between higher educations and employers, but also to look at the fit between students and employers. One of the things that I found very interesting in this intensive week in Antwerp with 100 students from 5 different universities was really special, is that the topic the students were talking about for their own future was how to get a job when I'm graduating. Especially in this environment of Corona, I think very often students are very concerned about how to get a job after my graduation. And fit between students and employers could help for that. Also, one of the goals is to improve foresight skill, of course, for students, but especially to use them in innovation processes. So they become, the students themselves become more resilient to change. And especially in this period right now, with this Corona pandemic, you have to be resilient to change. You have to see opportunities. You have to look in a different way. And we have 3 different keynotes, and it was really interesting to see that you saw those words coming up: innovation, resilience, opportunities. And we need industrial partners to have knowledge exchange and who supports also meaningful innovation and focuses on creativity. Guy was already talking about that, the grand societal challenges. We start with that because it is not only innovation and making business, it is really going towards a more social, future societal business. So it's very important to take with us the challenges we have. For example, sustainability is still a real huge challenge for the future, but also employability for our students. So how can industrial partners contribute to this? One of the things, being a commissioning party for the students. My dream, and I don't know if it's possible, but we'll see. My dream is to involve commissioning parties for our intensive week in Bilbao in Spain. So how demanding it will be for our students to create a business concept towards a preferable future for a commissioning party, for the real. So that also a commissioning party, an industrial partner, could be involved in this intensive week and also can discuss with our students and give their knowledge to our students. And our students can give their view on their preferable future, their innovation, their creativity towards those industrial partners. So being a part of the process, how can you translate this first stepping stone into business? That is part of the process of this method. Guy already explained that you go back, you go to your preferable future in 2050, and then you go backwards, choosing the transition path, and you will look at the first stepping stone towards this future. And they have to translate that into business. So if an industrial partner is involved, your students, of our students, can help you to think about the first stepping stone towards a preferable future. This is an example of the assignments that our students got during this very intensive week in Antwerp. They have to think for their first stepping stone to come up with a product or service. So that could help the customer moving towards this preferable future. And they have to think of all kinds of things. They have to make a value proposition. And this is a way to do so. A colleague of mine, Iris van Bossum, she can explain that very, very well. And she was also in Antwerp guiding that day for the students. So the idea, I won't explain this into detail, it's just an explanation of what our students had as an assignment. But they have to think, how can you create more meaningful value for personal development for your buyer persona? So it is really about business. It's not only about themselves, but also for the industrial partner. It's about tribe. How can you become part of a community? How can your user experience lead to that their opinion matters, that you listen to your consumers? Also, value for money, of course, because business have to earn money, that's for sure. But also, how do you create a big idea that enhances social responsibility for your buyer persona? And also, how do you stimulate, and that's for the students, to think about industry, how can you stimulate them to take care for the next generation? They also worked with a lean startup canvas. You can also think about business model canvas. And at the end, and it was really nice, I think all my project members agree, that they have to visualize their concept. They have to come with a pitch and show the concept. And for me, my dream is that they have to show it to a real industrial partner. So what does your product service look like? And how do you want to reach the customers? Create examples of products and services, what they are going to look like. And we ask them to pitch, to give a small pitch of a couple of minutes, and we have nice videos of that, to come up with the first stepping stone, the first product services they can think about, the first value creation for society, for industrial partners, to create this first stepping stone towards this preferable future. So, very short, how can industrial partners contribute to future research and education? To be a commissioning partners with challenges for your future, to be part of this, the process, inspire us and the students with your knowledge, to give our students a future. And I think especially right now in this pandemic of Corona. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you a lot. I take some quick notes from your presentation. While I'm watching your presentation, I saw the Tony's chocolate. I miss it a lot. I remember it from the Netherlands, and it's really nice to see the package of it.
Tony Chocolonely, yes. Yeah, it is a concept I can explain, but it's too much. Yeah.
So yes, the basic value proposition will help us to also understand the value of the money, but we know that we need to find out the way to how to communicate the idea. Even though the idea is perfect, we need to make interactively own that idea and make people to join that community. So what's your dream is our mutual dream in the project. So we are trying to commissioning party for the students. So the main aim is that. So that's really nice. Now we're going to talk about the students' view, which is really exciting part, because what kind of expectations do they have while they are having those courses is really important issue and data for us. So let's start to hear about the students' view by Omid Lotfi from Budapest Metropolitan University from Hungary. Hi, Omid.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. Before we begin, I wanted to thank everyone that organized this amazing meeting and of course the Foresight project. And I wanted to give a special thanks to Dr. Vilmos and METU and Dr. Gabor Budish for giving me the opportunity to be part of this amazing journey. So today I want to talk about what the Foresight project meant to us as students. What we expected during the Foresight program. As a generation of tomorrow, we expected to learn how to solve the problems of the future. We expected to learn how to become effective team members, to learn how to collaborate and cooperate. We expected how to learn how to turn our imagination into reality and work together in order to build the future. And we expected to meet amazing people and explore beautiful cities. The Foresight program taught us how to become more future conscious. It taught us how to understand the issues of tomorrow. The Foresight program helped us grasp the importance of collaboration. It helped us see how ideas today can be the building blocks of the desired future. The Foresight program taught us how to be a team. It helped us learn the value of unique and diverse minds. The Foresight program helped us map our ideas and turn it into real business models. It helped us change the world. For us, the Foresight program was more than just a conference. It was an experience. It gave us the opportunity to see a beautiful city, to meet wonderful people. And most importantly, the Foresight program helped us become united and fight for our future. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this beautiful journey and this beautiful and amazing program. Thank you.
Thank you, Omid. We'd really like to hear about the more details in the question and answers part, because we know that you have a really close friendship, and you also not only share this project content, also share your cultures, your thoughts. I knew that there is a good and long-term relationships started with those friendships. Yes. So I hope we're going to also detail those informations as a student's view. You are the representative. In the question parts, we're going to come back to the subject. And the last picture shows our all energy in the project. I think it was really nice. After the COVID, maybe we are going to have the next time we're going to meet again with our students and all partners together for the next step in Basque. I hope we are all staying safe, of course. So for the last part, we're going to talk about the teacher's view. When we were firstly started the teachers education in the teachers teaching program in the Tilburg, we are really also very energetic about the subject, and we really consider what we are going to do now, and we're asking all the time what we are going to do, what is the process, and we are love that, we are hate that, we are love again, and step by step we learn the process, and it was really the important experience for us as a teachers. So as a teacher's view, what kind of challenges do we have for the future research education is really important for the project aim. So Irati Agreas Koenaga from University of the Basque Country, she's going to tell us and give the details about what's the teacher's view. Hi, Irati.
Hi, Indra. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for doing this big effort of pronouncing my long and complex surname. Thank you very much. So I've got also a PowerPoint, but maybe I will start first just explaining a little bit on what we did. I'm not going to be very long, just 5 or 10 minutes, because also I want to have some time for the question and answers, and for the debate and things that maybe you want to share. I don't know if I can I share now the PowerPoint, or yeah?
I think you are the host.
Sorry? Okay. Okay. I don't know if I can do. Okay, I'm going to start first explain a little bit, and then I will share the pictures of what we did there. I want to thank also, of course, all my colleagues from the University of the Basque Country that are here also supporting this event, and also all my colleagues from the project. I'm going to talk about 2 of the pillars regarding the teacher program that we developed in Tilburg. So we were all over 25 teachers, well, more than 25 teachers, the ones that are directly involved in the project, but also different people from the 5 institutions. Well, this training was scheduled in that city of Tilburg. And I wanted to talk about the competences and the learning objectives that we try to develop there. Okay, so now I can share my screen. Okay, sorry, because I don't multiple participants here. Is it okay now? No. Can you see my screen? No. Okay. Maybe I don't know how to. Okay. I've got here the PowerPoint. It will be easier to do it with this, but I don't know why I can't share it.
No. Can you see the
now?
The screen? The green button on the toolbar.
Yeah. I'm here. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here. Share. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Great. Okay. So this is the first slide, but now, okay, we'll go a little bit here. Sorry. Okay. So the teacher program, we were there for 1 week, and we were working on sustainable development number 11. So the method was mainly developed by Foundation University, this institution that is already working on the on the issue. I would like to, as I said, I would like to underline some of the concepts we were working on in the. Sorry, because I'm a little bit disturbed. You still can see my PowerPoint? Okay, one moment. Yeah. So the networking, the important part of the project has to do with the values thinking. So we were working on the ability to collectively map and apply and negotiate sustainability values, sustainability principles, and of course the goals and the target. So one of the main objectives of this teacher program, of the method that was after that in a way transmitted and applied with students, have to do with critical thinking. As this is an important part of this competence, the evaluation of an issue, taking an issue, evaluating in order to form a judgment or an idea. This was the first one, values thinking, but also we were talking about the interpersonal skills. So other abilities related to teachers, because this was the teacher program, when studying the future and when developing this Foresight project. During this week in Tilburg, we were working on the ability to work in teams, to understand, to embrace and to facilitate the diversity among the different cultures and different social groups. So one of the other second key points of this project is the interpersonal competence. It's like the basic ingredient in the when we nurture the project at all. Then we also were working out the future thinking. Of course, how to give solutions to sustainability problems and solutions. And of course, this also may help, as I said there, like constructing a coherent and possible pictures for the future. So we're talking about the values thinking, that has to do with critical thinking, as I said, the interpersonal skill, the future thinking, then the system thinking, also the ability to analyze sustainability problems and solutions cutting across different domains. We were considering different agents, we were considering different cause-effect structures. And finally, the communication part. Monica also has underlined this idea, but how we can communicate information, ideas, problems, solutions, not just for a specialist audience, but also for a non-specialist one. And the fifth day, because there were 5 days of training or in this teacher program, this is what we try to do. And here I would like to underline that this is something we try to also work on with the students in the Antwerp week. The importance of considering in our presentation not just the discourse, the story, but also the medium, that is like our voice, our body, and our heart when we communicate. So these were the main values we were working on in the Teach the Teacher program, in order to describe, in order to share, in order to outline our preferred future. As Guy has commented, this is one, and then create our business model, of course. But I mean, this was like the path we follow, and then we went to Antwerp. So, of course, this is the methodology that we are still trying to interiorize and trying to apply in different institutions. For example, for Fontis, because they were leading it, was something more familiar, but for other institutions, as for the University of the Basque Country, these are like giant steps or small giant steps towards including this Foresight view, this future view in our teaching programs. But this is one of the other important values of the Foresight project for teachers, that we are in a way obliged or encourage or foster to work in a very transdisciplinary way. This concept that we have tried to work on so many times, but maybe we are a few steps away from hitting, how to put it into practice. I'm not going to go further in the method, but just to finish, I would like to comment some of the challenges in relation to the process and the skills related to the Foresight project in terms of teachers. One of the, or which are the main challenges that maybe we can discuss on them afterwards. But one of the main challenges, of course, debating on our preferable future in an international setting. In Tilburg, we were working in groups, but in each group we have people coming from different cultural backgrounds, and this, of course, created, we will say, like different ways of looking at the same problem, or even different ways of looking at the same sustainable development goal. So for us, it's important in this, for the teacher's part, to know how to evaluate when we have to apply the method, the prototyping the future method with these sustainable values, to know how to apply them, how to introduce it in different teaching guides or teaching programs. Or the challenge for teachers collaborating and being creative to explore and also to define these preferable futures. Of course, the challenge of identifying different intercultural differences and developing a more future consciousness and concluding on what is our role when related to the future and when relating to future studies. So to end this very brief presentation, I would like to share some questions or maybe some ideas. I would like to know also which are the ideas of the other professors that are here today in this conference. So if you see that there are tangible interest in internalizing these methodologies in your teacher programs, or also we were talking about which are the benefits of focusing on more an innovative way in our own research, but also in our teaching guides. For example, at the University of the Basque Country, we would like to ask for some funding on education innovation programs to introduce it little by little. I think after the second student stay here in Bilbao next year, we will be also acquiring more solidify and a much more stronger methodology for this prototyping future subject. And also, yeah, just to finish, I would like to comment on what Professor Saritas and Patrick have said, that it's about complexity thinking. This is one of the conclusions I think we had after the teacher program in Chile. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irati. It's really nice to hear about the teacher's view and give the details. So we can kindly start to the questions and the answers part if you want. So we can also discuss more detail about the subject. One of my colleagues from the Istanbul Commerce University, Ali Altuğ Biçer, asked one question to everyone. I think all of you is going to have some answers about that question. How you can adopt this future thinking idea into education system considering different cultures? Anyone that wants to answer this question? According to the cultural differences, how we can adapt this future thinking to education?
I think that's it. It is a challenge. We encountered it ourselves when we were at the intensive week in Antwerp. I remember, Vegan, you corrected me. You had a remark towards me, and I said, "Oh my goodness, yeah, that was more the Dutch way of doing it." So we learn also a lot of each other, and I think it's also the fun part of it. You have to think the methods of future thinking is really not invented in the Netherlands. It is really something also around the world. We saw that from the keynote speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every culture, every country has its challenge. We have now a common challenge, a few common challenges, coronavirus, the sustainability, things like that. But what I learned from this week in Antwerp, that every country, every culture has its own challenges. And you can use a method very well for every challenge somebody has. So everybody has, and every group has its own preferable future. So you can use that very well for that.
Okay. Anyone wants to add more things, or Wilmos is going to ask his hard question?
Teşekkürler. I'd like to ask a question to Omid. Yes. That how do you see the added value of this project on student skills? Especially think about your workshops, please.
I think that the students really learned how to, well, we really learned how to become more future conscious, and we learned how to work together. And I could see that everyone with different cultures, with different mindsets, with different personalities worked together in order to make the possibility for a healthier, more sustainable, more economic, more equal future. And honestly, I think this was fascinating. It was beautiful. And I think that this has, this program, this project has inspired every student within that program to have the desire to build a better future. And I think that this can be a very important factor for reaching that preferred future.
Yeah. Thank you, Omid. I really appreciate every relevant question in the exam period. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, do we have more questions? Or for the speakers, do you want to add the last words before we are ending the section?
Well, yes, Vegan, I would like to add one thing to the former question, the question about the cultural differences. Mm-hmm. A few years ago, I was involved in another project. It was a bit similar. We were discussing economic growth with students from different universities, different countries, but moreover, students of different educational background. And sometimes in the discussions, I saw that the frictions came mainly from the difference in educational background, because there were social workers who had to agree with economists, and that was sometimes much harder than to come over cultural differences. But that was a nice thing of a nice plus in the education of that methodology, of course.
Yes, you're right. I think that's the end of the questions. So let's, before ending the section, I really thank all the participants because we have a chance to discuss the details, the content of the project. We know that these kind of projects are have the need to see the outputs, what they're aiming about. So we started to see some outputs, minor outputs, but we know that it's going to be changed a lot in the future time. So it's been great honor to be the one part of this project and to be the moderator this section. Thank you for all of you for your participations. I think we are going to pass through the part 3, which is about the presentations on the developed online platform for the project, for the specific content. Frank, I think.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'd like to ask Irati to pass the host role me.
Yes, sorry. I think it's... Is it okay?
If you click on my picture on the top right corner, there will be a blue button with 3 dots on it. Press it and then make host menu.
I think, is it okay now?
Yes, great. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I had to switch to another system. So just for a short link, we had a final word cloud. We will share that with the slides and presentations on the project website. And now it is a time to show you the online platform. Regarding that, I would like to show you 2 different things. First, the platform itself, which is a kind of a virtual reality environment, a kind of a virtual presentation sphere where we can put any kind of content you'd like to use. And I invite my colleagues in the project to talk about the content itself, because they were the head of the groups, working groups, which are focusing on the content preparation, and it is an ongoing process. So we have some outcomes, and then we will do on many things regarding that. So this is the point when I switch to myself to another host. 10 seconds technical switch, please. So here we are. The system we use called Maxware, this is this virtual presentation space. And this is for demonstrating how we can include teamwork in a virtual space where the screens on the wall are contents or website windows or other things. So here we can put together online collaborative activities, while we can do all of the community social networking services and platforms what we can use. Here is, for example, our community social networking YouTube channel with this conference now. So you can see that this is how we can include even live streams. I stopped that because it was too low, I hope. But so this is the way how we can interact with the system, with live streams, with chats, Facebooks, Instagrams, websites, and so on and so forth. So here, the environment could be a virtual collaborative space for the students. And we can deliver the lectures or do the seminars, workshops, or the homeworks or teamworks can be presented here. What I would like to show you here is some contents about the trainings we developed and tested with our students. And this intensive training week, the day one was about problem definition. And this is the way how the content organized, the lecture notes, and the related contents, videos, and other things for that. Here we can use it as a presentation screen. Here we can use that like the classic video contribution to the lecture. And of course, we can include the platforms like Mentimeters, others where we can vote or cooperate, as Google Drives and Teams and so on can be integrated. Why we do use this platform? Because it's promising many independency on interfaces and independency on platforms of different cloud services and vendors. And this is a concept of what Windows introduced us decades ago. We have a desktop shelf, and we have some folders and things, and we have left open things. Then we can go back and continue the place. Here's the same. We can set up our virtual environment. We can stay here as much as we can, and then leave the space in the opened books, opened videos, opened social media sites, and so on, and can continue the work with our teammates who can enter the same place, who can enter the same room, and we can work together. So this is a platform available internationally, so it's not some tiny thing. And I really would like to ask my colleagues to talk about the content itself, because we are now in the development of the content phase. And I think it's very interesting what kind of things we would like to put together for the students in this flexible environment. When they are doing, we can see the content what we prepared for them for a given lecture or a given seminar. So this way we can follow up what the team developed for a given concept. We can check their homeworks or contributions as well, while they can use the same space independently from each other. This way they can use their secrecy of their work if they wanted to. So I'd like to ask my colleagues to join and talk about the content. I stop sharing, and then I think you can you can contribute with your presentation, or I can give you the host role if you want to share something.
Thank you so much. I think this platform, this Maxware environments could help also our students when we go next year to Bilbao for the intensive week. Our students have to prepare themselves in their own universities. And in between, they have to make videos. They have to also discuss with each other. And I think this will be an ideal environment to do so. So they have to come up with their opinion about the SDGs and their point of view from their country. So I think it is really interesting to involve that part in Maxware, and that is also open to others to look at it.
Vilmos.
I like to add something without sharing that we made a workshop with my colleague Gabor Bolish in Antwerp on the role of creative thinking in the change management. And I'd like to share my idea regarding what's the role of PowerPoint presentation on Maxware collaborative learning platform. And I'd like to emphasize 3 points on my poetic question. That first is that our presentation on the Maxware, the structure is very important for inspiring thinking to the students and teachers and everybody who are interested in this project, especially the question triangle behind our presentation, PowerPoint. First of all, why, and secondly, how, and finally, what. So that's why, how, what. I think that it's absolutely inspired to our mind in order to think effectively on our topics. So let's start to why. And after that, we try to put lots of examples, activities, and collaborative activities to the think about how. And finally, the final point of the structure, which is really pragmatic on this PowerPoint presentation, the conclusion, our session, we put the dilemma-based, question-based conclusions, emphasizing some alternatives behind our topic in order to put on this PowerPoint at the end. That's why we try to motivate the students, for instance, in Bilbao, that think about the different alternatives and solutions and scenarios behind the conclusion. I see that, I don't know exactly that. Gabor, are you here? No, just the photo. Okay. So that's the role of the potential role of PowerPoint presentation and our philosophy. That's very important. This is my last point to you, that we try to structuralize our workshop that for aiming collaborative learning, thinking, and creativity. So that's the 2 triangles behind the PowerPoint. First is question triangle, why, how, what. And after that, philosophical, pragmatic triangle, that learning, thinking, and be creative. So that was my point. Thank you, Ferenc.
Thank you very much, Vilmos. Guy? Please.
Yes, it's a very challenging environment, but we don't have much experience at this moment, so we still have to figure out how we will use that. There is already some content on it. You can find on Maxware, you can find the the slides we have used during our sessions in Antwerp and in Tilburg. You can find the canvases the students have to fill in during the methodology. You can find movies for our students. So, okay, but we still have to get more experience to use it in Bilbao.
Definitely. You presented a really good and inspiring workshop for the students in a week. That's the content what you use yet in the master. So could you share some experience regarding the content and the students' feedback regarding our learning content? Vilmos, how did you feel students' contribution to on the workshop in Antwerp?
You repeat your question, please, because the technical problem.
Okay, how did you experience the students' feedback on the Antwerp training regarding the content of the course?
Yeah, that's I'd like to focus on not just on the content, but for the competencies as well. So the first cluster of the feedback that was related to working at the intercultural group and intercultural atmosphere. That was a really high added value on this program. So lots of students from Budapest Metropolitan University raised this point, the intercultural collaboration. And the second cohort of the feedback was regarding the high-level creativity. And they got lots of opportunities in order to think in a divergent way and showing lots of ideas and presentations, and let's see the posters and any other effective tools. And finally, the last cohort from the feedback of the students was about extracurricular activities. So they really enjoy socializing among the students in spite of the formal program. Omid, could you add any point of my three cohorts?
Yes, also I think that we students, we really enjoyed the fact that we could turn our ideas into business models, which was a fascinating thing for us to do. And for me personally, it was very hard to do at first, but with the help of the teachers and with the help of the program, it became easier and easier every single step of the way. And I think the result, the ending result was much more better and more business-like than I personally expected it to be, and it was very, very good. So yeah, I want to thank you about that as well, because the process was amazing.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
August, what do you think about the process itself? How the learning materials reflect to the things what we discussed today regarding the future, regarding the students' point of views? August, we can't hear you.
Could you please repeat the question? Because as you see, yeah.
Okay. What is your opinion regarding the content development in line with the opinions and the topics came up by the keynote speakers and questions? as well workflows reflect some important terms. So how we go as a project direction.
So I think it's time to close the conference. It seems that way. Huh? Is that true?
Partly, at least, we can discuss about if we're to change anything in our orientation, in our development focus, as well as some questions could come up from the audience as well, would be helpful towards our work.
Okay. When I was watching the keynote speakers' presentations, that's one thing that I noticed, that what we're doing is, in terms of content, is a little bit static. So we have to put some dynamic dimensions to the content that we're creating and the way that we develop the model. That's very new. This is one of the things that I have taught during the presentation. So if you ask me how are we gonna do it, this is just a fresh idea. So we need to first think about how to dynamize what we have so far, because our content is it was brilliant so far. We did a lot. We did a lot of things to be able to increase the future consciousness of the students, of the tools that we have. But it's a little bit when I see the presentations and the ideas that they come up, I felt that we have to a little bit find some dynamic dimensions of what we are doing. So that's one thing that we have to consider in the next meetings, next discussions that we're going to do. And for the online tool that we have created, I think we have to also figure out some dynamic and interactive areas that the students and the teachers at other universities would be able to use these tools that we have created. So that's one thing that I have to add. We did so far so good, but we have to a little bit increase the dynamism of the content that we have created. And the other thing that is very that's always inspiring for me whenever we meet together in person in Antwerp, in Budapest, or in other places, and also in online environments. After listening so many people talking about the future, it's always it always makes me feel a little bit more happy about what we are doing, because now in the middle of a pandemic crisis, we're still trying to figure out how the future will be reshaped and how our preferred future will be. So, and we're always discussing the problems one side, but also talking about the hope. So, I always feel that future is coming with challenges, problems that we created, but it will happen with the hopes or solutions that these young people will come up. So that's a great thing. So if we can figure out some tools to be able to identify the dynamic versions of what we have done so far, and if we can bring these methodologies and content to more people at other universities, which will be useful for them, I think we will have a better feedback. So since day one, I'm not talking only about the contract of the project, but since the idea first was initiated by Fontis, we always cared about finding the right way to pass the information to the people, to the target audience, most of the students. So I think this midway conference and the things that we have done so far were amazing for any of us, because it opened our vision to another perspective. So hopefully we will do further. We will do better. And this after this pandemic, we're going to come together to discuss what we can do to take this content to more audience. Thank you for everybody for joining us for such a conference.
Thank you very much. And I think this is a time to ask if there is any more questions. We will be open to answer you, and I show you access details for that. Here are, sorry. Here are the access of the project, and I would like to ask you to fill out our feedback form to give us some suggestions and argue about this event.
Is it possible to copy the link in the chat box because it's not accessible from here?
For sure, for sure. In a moment. But I do hope that with the mobile you can take the QR code.
Yeah, with the let me see if it works. No, I think I have to do something. Okay.
Okay, but I put it in the chat.
I'm not that technological that.
Okay, the link is in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So on behalf of the team organizing this event, thank you very much for your effort and contributions and stamina to stay here for all this long session. It was our first trial in this project to make this kind of event, and I hope that next time we will be much more better in the service quality, although it seems that the connection was more or less stable. Thank you for your contributions. We will share the presentations and the answers to the questions on the website of the project. And see you next time in the future, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for your kind presentations. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, in Turkey, there's a saying, the last person who leaves will be the host. So we're going to wait for everybody to leave.
Yeah.
Also, I'm waiting.
Me too. Everybody's staying, so you know I cannot go.
Okay, it was great to see you. And thank you for the efforts. I think
you.
It was worth to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye.
Bye.
And thank you for the backup team, because they did a great job. Zoltan and Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.